Here we are back to Gilgulim. We're talking about Gilgulim, which are reincarnations of people. They're Neshamot that come and revamp themselves over again. When we last left our idea, we basically spoke about the fact that Gilgulim explain a number of different questions, which we want to actually speak about today a little bit. We mentioned that it explains about Lo Aleinu, little children that die, or the idea of people with Down syndrome or autism or things like that, because they're a Neshama to a certain extent that was incomplete. And it came back in a certain type of form, and that's how sometimes it comes as a sacrifice for all of us, or for the Neshama, that he should end up coming. Okay, the Vilna Gaon writes on Vayalevi Avo, on Yalevi Avo, on the bracha Vayalevi Avo, it's brought in Orach Chaim. He writes it by Kitzur over there. But he brings down the idea. I'm not going to get into all of it. When we talk about Ishei Yisrael, when we say in the bracha of Ratzei, Ishei Yisrael, we mentioned the words Ishei Yisrael. Remember? Ishei Yisrael. Ishei Yisrael is a question if that's referring to davening, to our tefillot, or it's referring to the korbanot, the sacrifices that we did in the temple, in the Beit HaMikdash. And anyways, over there he brings two pshatim based on Tosfot, or it's referring to the Neshama of Tzadikim. It's referring to the Neshama of Tzadikim that go on the Mizbeach. Or it's referring to Tinokot Shel Beit Rabban. Kilu, there's a certain sacrifice of the younger children for our sake. They're nitfas al ador. That's his lashon. They for the sake of us, for us, in order to save us. So they are actually sacrificed to a certain extent through the angel Michael. It sounds a little bit abstract, a little bit interesting. But at least we see from here that there's a certain explanation, a certain reason for these types of things that happen. Obviously, it's no fault of theirs. Sometimes it has to do with the parents. And if it's not, then it has to do with a Gilgul that was coming to be taken care of. Last idea, if you look at the last year, I know not it wasn't put it up yet, but you'll see we spoke about a number of stories that are connected to this. Okay, now.
Tzadik being mechaper.
Yeah, similar idea, right? Same thing as Mitzva Tzadik being mechaper. We also spoke about the idea of even giving Kavod to someone with Down syndrome or autism, because it comes from a higher level. They're in a certain place that's in a higher place, and you have to give a certain type of Kavod. Okay. What I wanted to speak about today, we're going to speak about two sections here. The first section I wanted to mention, to speak about, is what a lot of people have already asked over here. My nafkamina from everything that we're talking about. Who cares? What does this have to do with me, right? What does this have to do with me? I understand. You know, if you teach me halakha, so I know what I have to do, even though it's less interesting, but at least I know I have to do something. Or if you teach me certain stories, I could take a lesson from this. But why does it make a difference about this idea of learning about Gilgulim, about the Gilgulim, and how do I know what that has to do with me on a personal basis? Okay, so one message we learned, like I just spoke out, is the idea of understanding that things happen in this world and we don't have answers to everything, but there's cheshbonot, there's calculations. But how do I know what my Gilgul is? Okay, so this is very important because this teaches us what I can do. The Vilna Gaon in Sefer Yonah, I quoted it last week also. The Vilna Gaon in Sefer Yonah, like I said, the whole Sefer Yonah, according to the Vilna Gaon, besides pshat, the simple understanding is a mashal. It's not a mashal, it's al pi drush. Al pi remez, excuse me. In remez he explains it has to do with the goof and the neshama. There's a body and a soul that we are all made up of. Yonah is in the yam. The yam is considered olam hazeh, the sfiva, the olam. The olam in general is called the yam. The yam, you can drown in this world. You can get drowned in this world. You get lost by it. How do you get saved? By your oniyah, with a boat. A boat is ani. He doesn't say all these things. The word oniyah, ani, means me. By you having a certain individuality, knowing yourself, you can keep yourself afloat instead of getting drowned. Many people unfortunately get drowned and just do what everyone else does. You're succumbed to everyone else and you end up never thinking for yourself because you're not an oniyah, you're not an ani, you don't take care of yourself. And he speaks about the idea of him being thrown into the yam. He was thrown into the yam, into Olam Haba, into this world, swallowed up by 11. He has a whole pirush over there. It's a beautiful pirush. But one thing he says over there, he asked this question. He goes, the idea of Gilgulim, how do I know which Gilgul I am? How do I know what I need to be mitaken? How do I? So he says like this, he said, if there's a certain, and this is closely very important, if you have a certain aveira, a certain thing that you have a big cheshik for, a big interest, you have a big desire, an incredible ta'ava for a certain aveira, so you should know that there you go, that's it. That's the ticket, as they say, right? That's the way that you have to know what to correct yourself. If a person knows that he is an overriding desire for certain interests, or personal interests, or desires, or physical desires, etc., things that are wrong, so you should know that that is coming from a place that you did something wrong in the previous life. it was left incomplete. You are now have something incomplete within you over here, and you got to fix it up. And the way to do it is by overcoming yourself, to override it. Person did a lot of the stories in the Mincha Yehuda has to do with illicit relations. If it has to do, a person stole money, a person killed someone else, a person did the wrong things. He wasn't Shomer Shabbat. Everything, he comes back for those things. It's certain things that he has a desire for, to do the wrong thing. That's where his Tikun is, and a person has to know that is where you have to go. It's in Perek Daled, Pasuk Gimel. If you want to look it up in the Vilna Gaon and Yonah. Okay. Now, I'm going to say a different pshat. The Shevet HaMusar. The Shevet HaMusar is that sefer that we quoted on the first shir, that everybody has still goosebumps from that sefer. He's the one that says all these vicious things and tough things because people used to be able to handle it. Nowadays we don't, so we don't really quote it. I have no choice. I have to quote it sometimes in the shir. Okay? But at least over there he says a very interesting pshat. What is the tikkun that we are doing? He asks, what is the tikkun that we're trying to do? How do we know? Now again, it's going to sound a little bit different. It's, let's say, the other side of the same coin. What he's about to say is the same coin on the other side, a little bit of a different twist. The Vilna Gaon said if I have a certain desire for a certain aveira of doing something wrong, so that's the problem. He says for a mitzvah, if I have a specific desire to do a mitzvah, if I find myself interested in doing certain mitzvot, then that's it. That's what you should be going for. So one was the bad side, the dark side, and one's the light side, right? One's the light side. The person has a certain desire to do something good, so that means that you're coming to fix that up. Hashem put it in you to be able to finish up the final Gilgul. And he says that's a beautiful pshat. There's a famous Gemara in Shabbat, on Kuf Yud Chet. The Gemara says, Teiti li, I deserve to get credit because I did a certain mitzvah. They give a whole list of different Talmidei Chachamim. One says, Teiti li, shekiyamti mitzvah tzitzit. Chazak Baruch, like, okay, you did tzitzit. Another one says, and I was Mekayim mitzvah tefillin. The other one says, I was always Mekayim Sudah Shlishit. All through the go, wow, I'm a big Tzadik. I deserve to be in the Gemara. I don't know what I'm doing in this generation here. You know what I'm saying? Well, what is this? Because he did a mitzvah, I didn't ever open before Shabbat. Well, what's the makrapo? What is it? What?
Nachas notes.
Very good. It says when the kids get their little petics, like, yeah, he did that, right? He was good in tefillah. Very good. Right? So maybe that's it. So what's the answer? The answer is that they knew where their Gilgul was, and they did it ad asof. They did the mitzvah until the end. They made sure to do it to its fullest, because they knew, right? They knew that was their tikkun. They knew that there was a certain connection they had to this mitzvah, and since they had a connection to this mitzvah, they were very makpid, they were very specific to make sure that they would end up doing this mitzvah. You follow? It's an interesting phenomenon, and you should know there is a Rambam like that. The Rambam says that the Rambam in the end of Makot, it's a very famous Rambam, but this just brings a little bit more light to it. The Rambam says that everybody should go out of their way to pick one mitzvah. You should pick one mitzvah and do it ad asof. You should do it to its fullest. You should try to take a mitzvah that's good. I know a few people that they take one mitzvah and they're very makpid on sheina b'Shabbat ta'anug. Right? It's a mitzvah, no? Yeah. Some people are very makpid to sleep on Shabbat because it's a big mitzvah. You're supposed to sleep on Shabbat. They take advantage 3, 4, 5 hours of chetchila, maybe it's a bachar, whatever. They make sure that they want to do it lehadrin. Everybody has to fix that mitzvah. If it's on Erev Yom Kippur to eat, okay, take it. No, if that's what it is, that's what it is. A person has to pick one good mitzvah and take it and try to fill it out of stuff. Be bichlal teiti li. I deserve credit. That's what the Gemara said. Teiti li, I deserve special credit. The Gemara was talking about why they lived longer lives and what there was good about them. And that's what it says. That if you do it in order to do it to the best, that's the credit that you get. Okay? But that has to do with what we're speaking about now, Gilgulim. That if you do it, then you are being metaken, you're fixing up something that you needed to fix. I want to quote the next part in the Shevet HaMusar report. He says an interesting thing. Like I say, he's a strong sefer, and over here, we know this idea, but he says a very strong point about this, and I'm almost quoting him word for word. Im yesh lecha, listen to the words he says. He says over there, Im yesh lecha cheshek tfei. Now he's talking about learning. Until now, we talked about a mitzvah. Okay, because that's going to be your fixing up in this world. He says, Im yeshcha cheshek tfei lemikra migmara. Also in learning, if you have more of a desire to learn chumash, to learn the Torah, the Mikra, more than Gemara, so go for it, he says. So then you should be learning more Chumash than Gemara. Or the hepech, if a person enjoys Gemara, and that's also like that many times, a person enjoys the Gemara, the text, the analytical, to be able to learn it be'iyun even more than Chumash, then go for it. He says that's what you should be doing. Or if you like pshat more than Kabbalah, a person likes learning pshat more than Kabbalah, meaning he learns the simple things. He learns, not the simple things, Hashem. I mean, he learns Gemara and Psukim, and he learns what he's supposed to be doing. He learns Halacha Lamaisa. If he enjoys that, so that's what he should be doing. But if he likes Kabbalah, if he likes doing things that have to do with Kabbalah, we're not learning Kabbalah here, we're learning pshat. But, right? No, it's not pshat. Right? So he says, so that's what he should be doing. And if he likes Lehepich, if he likes Kabbalah, he should also do it. He didn't say only do it, he should also learn Kabbalah. He should be able to learn it, which is the famous Gemara. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah, as we all know in Daf Yud Zayin. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, En Adam Lomed Ela Ma Shelibo Chafetz. It's a very famous Gemara that everybody's familiar with, that a person has to learn what he desires. But over here we're giving a little bit of, we say, a taich, an understanding. What does it mean? But it's not just that you should learn what's good, which is also important. You should enjoy your learning, but that's where your tikkun is. That's what you're supposed to be doing, because your neshama has a desire for it for a reason. You have a certain koach, you have a certain capability. Hashem gave you that capability because that's what you're here to fix up. That's what you should be fixing up, and that's why Hashem put you here in order to do it. Okay, that's the idea. He says Mishnah, Talmud, Kabbalah, Agadah, everyone according to what they're doing. And like I said, first, okay. Now, one thing he says there. He says, "V'yelecha harbe me'akvim otcho al davar ze misamael." Samach mem, I shouldn't say his name. Okay, a lot of things are me'akev. A lot of things will try to get in your way from doing what you should be doing. You have a certain to do it. Hayetzer limnoa tikun, because he doesn't want you to be mitaken the tikun. Samach mem, the malach who tries to always get against, he's going to try to stop you from doing what's right. But you have to take it and try to pull and try to do it to your best. And then he says, "V'titen et adin im lo takshiv lemusar zeh," and you're going to have a din if you don't listen to me. V'taseh hepech shlichut shelcha. If you do the opposite of what your shlichut is, of what your obligation is, this is why you're here. You're here to do a certain thing, and if you're not attentive to what you're supposed to be doing, you should do it. Now again, you're supposed to be learning also pshat and also things. You're supposed to be, as they say, meguvan. You're supposed to know the Torah. It's one of the mitzvot in the Torah to learn these ideas. Okay. Maybe you're speaking to a Litvish Rav, if you will, a Litvish Sephardi Rav, but at the same time, I don't hold of these people who only learn Kabbalah all day, and they're Amaratzim Gemurim, right? They barely know a daf of Shas, and they barely know how to learn, and they barely know anything, and they're just learning a thing. It's a bizayon for the Torah. That's the truth. Just to be able to know Eitz Chaim, that's not what we're talking about. But he says mefurash that they should also learn that. But if that's where you can make more of a encounter of it. That's where you should be presenting yourself. If a person connects to the Kabbalah learning, so therefore that's fine. That's what you should be doing in order to make that connection. Okay? That's what he says. And there's a famous Maaseh. Now he brings it with a different interpretation. With the Arizal and the Alshich. Do people know what the Alshich is? The Alshich is the famous Alshich. He lived during the time of the Arizal. Okay? During the time of the Arizal. He was the Darshan. He was a Baal Drashot. We have a Svarim called Torah Moshe, okay? It's called Torah Moshe Alshich, that was his name. And it's a beautiful sefer with many, many drashot, and it's very commonly known, we know, just like the Malbim was a Navi, and Chumash, the Alshich has a pirush on Chumash, and he was the drashon at the time. Tzfat, if you ever go to Tzfat at that time, that was a really, as they say, rocking Beit HaKnesset. It was a really rocking shul. The Rav was the Beit Yosef, was Rav Yosef Cairo. The Arizal was on the other side, he was the Mashgiach in the area. The Darshan, the one giving over the drashot, was the Alshich. He was the one giving over the drashot. And the Gabai was the one who was Mechaber Lechadodi, Rav Alkovitz. He was. They're all buried over there in that area. If you were there for that time, you were in a different dargah. It wasn't such a long period of time because Arizal wasn't there. He was only there for a certain amount of time, but 10, 15 years. For a certain period of time, they say he used to daven in the same shul. Yeah, and they had a certain period of time. Huh? He was only there for 2 years. He was only there 2 years? Okay. I thought it was like 10. Okay. Could be. It was Niftar, as we know, very early, unfortunately. Rizal died very young, 39 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And he wasn't able to stay there so long. But Al Kopadim at that time, there's many stories about him with the Beit Yosef at the same time. They have two shuls in Tzfas of the Arizal. They call the Arizal Ashkenazi and Sephardi, by the way. You should know. The Ashkenazi, the Arizal Sephardi is actually where he davened. Even though he was Ashkenazi, he kind of converted. Really interesting, right? He kind of converted, no, but he did it. I don't know if he converted completely Sephardi. He davened Sephardi because you can't do the Tikunim, all the Kavanot of the Arizal doesn't work in the Ashkenazi Suda. It doesn't make it. doesn't go. So in order to do all the kavanot of the Arizal, and the Arizal knew all the kavanot of the Arizal, he knew them Baal Peh. So he would daven Sfaradi in order to, there was no such thing as Sfarad back then, by the way. There was no such thing as the middle Sfarad. He would daven Sfaradi in order to be able to do all the kavanot, which is what Sfaradim, as we know, are very makpid to do. Could be. Yeah, I think I heard that also, right? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but at the same time, so so I always wondered what is the Beit Knesset Ashkenazi? What's the Arizal Ashkenazi? The Arizal Beit Knesset Ashkenazi is where he stood to be Mekabel Shabbat. We all know when he would say Boi Kala, when he would be Mekabel Shabbat, he stood on the mountains of Tzfat facing Meron, and that's when you would see the thing. If you go to the Beit Knesset Ashkenazi of the Arizal, there was no shul there at the time he was alive. It wasn't a shul. They built a shul on the spot in the mountain where he would go with all his Talmidim and face Meron, and they would welcome Shabbat Mal Kitav, facing Meron. If you go to the shul there, you see it's a beautiful view of Meron. You can mamish see Meron from the mountaintops. But it's not really that he daven there. I think it's a facade that some people think, but it's fine as long as they, as long as people come and daven there, that's good. It's better than not davening. Okay, but Al Kopanim, that's that. Why am I mentioning this? Oh, so the Arizal, once the Rav Alshich, who was, like I said, the Darshan in the shul, the Doresh, he came up to the Arizal and said, "Can you please teach me some of your Kabbalah? I also want to know. Look, I'm a Darshan. I know everything in Pshat, but I have to go." And it's very Yudua that the Arizal said, "I'm not going to teach it to you. I'm not going to teach it to you." Now, the way I always received the reason for that was why the Arizal didn't do it. And this, maybe it's less reason, is because the Alshich had a mind of Bina, if we could call it the left-sided brain. And for Kabbalah, you need to have a right-sided brain, meaning you have to have a mind of Chokhmah. It has to be in a different type of way of thinking. And so this is always one of the things amongst the Mekubalim that they speak about, that they say you have to be careful for people who are not befitting to learn Sod. Not everybody's befitting to learn Sod because they can kind of take it in the wrong way, or it can be utilized incorrectly. Okay, it can be utilized incorrectly. Some people say the Ramchal was more of a mind of Bina, and that's why he took it in a different type of way. He took it, the Ramchal, or Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who was unbelievable, Kol Sod, and he made it very practical for us. But some people say he had a different way of thinking about it, and that's why not everybody was satisfied with the Ramchal's Mahalach. Like the Leshem speaks about it, but okay, that's not our category. We're not holding there at all. But that's the usual reason. The Shevet Musar, when he brings this Maisa with the Arizal, he says the Ari told the Alshich, you should know, in your previous Gilgul, you finished the job. You did Kabbalah, you were a big Mekubal, you were the top of the line. I know from your previous Gilgul that you were Beseder Gamor. He told the Rav Alshich, you finished your Gilgul. You were left, what you didn't finish is the koch of drush, of mikra, of Torah, of learning psukim to be a darshan, and this is where, that's why you see, that's where your cheshek is, that's where you're good at, that's where Hashem gave you capabilities, that's what you need to do. Don't waste your time with my stuff. I'm in a different category. Everyone's different. You got to stop looking over our shoulders, trying to compare ourselves with someone else and say, oh, look how much kavod he's getting, I should do it. He says, this is where you're good at, this is where your kavod is going to be, and that's where, not your kavod, that's where your tikun is going to be, that's where your tikun is, that's where you're supposed to do what you need to do, and that's what a person has to know. That's what he has to do. It's a big lesson for us to learn, these ideas, at least, that a person has to know where I'm good at, and what's my capabilities, and where my cheshek is, where my interest is, where my interest lies. That's what you're here for, that's what you're there to do a tikkun, and you're supposed to do it right. Of course, in the parameters of the Torah, and you have to do what's right, and etc. But al kapanim, that's the yesod that we're learning here. Okay, so this, we've learned, is how a person knows what his Gilgul is. Okay, that's how he knows what his Gilgul is, what he's coming to be returned, in order to make to make sure he doesn't return. Okay, that's that. Now, in order that a person knows that he doesn't come back, so a person has to figure this out, meaning you have to think about it. That's what Mesilat Yesharim says. Yitbarer v'yitma'et etzel adam ma chovato be'elomo ve'lama tzarich she'yasim mabato ve'magmato kol asher hu amal kol chimei chayav. Right? A person has to know what is his tachlit. That's what the Mesilat Yesharim means. A person has to figure out, what am I here for? Because when you don't think, you'll never know. So really, we're going to finish this year. Everyone's going to go home, and I understand, and that's it. And Shalom Yisrael until the next year. But a person should stop and think, where is my Tikun, what am I supposed to be doing? Okay, because unfortunately, like the Reshit Chokhmah, we quoted it a few weeks ago, He says that a person who messes up, who missed his Gilgul, is coming back, and it's similar to a guy, you remember this that we mentioned 3 weeks ago, a person who goes overseas, he goes for 2-3 weeks, it wasn't an LL trip, he had to take a boat, and he had to leave his family doesn't know where he is for 3-4 weeks, till he comes back another 3-4 weeks, to go do business over there in Thailand, and he has to figure out till he gets back, and while he's there, he goes there, and he realizes, oh my gosh, this was a big mistake, there's nothing here, idiot. Right? You went all the way this trip, you feel like a complete dodo brain. Why did I take this long trip in order to do it? Before you take the trip, you schedule, you figure it out, right? You figure out what you need to do. I didn't say to download it, I said you can figure it out without downloading, right? You can figure out what I'm supposed to be doing, right, in order to get there, and find the right place, and you go. And that's when you take your trip. You don't go without planning ahead. So to here, a person's here, you're going to be here 70, 80, Bezrat Hashem 90, Alvai, maybe even 100, we'll give you an extra 10. Okay? If that's true, so don't waste your time. Come on, don't waste it. Why should you come back for not? You want to turn into a cat when you come back, when you want to do that? Mazah Shavet. Okay, that's really the yesod that they bring down here. Okay, that's what the Reshit Chochmah said, and that's the messer that we're trying to bring out here. Seder? Okay. Yeah.
No, seriously.
No, we went back to that. That's what we spoke about last week, right? We mentioned 2 weeks ago. We spoke about that you can go as a cat and you come into a Beit Midrash, or you do some type of Tikun, or you do something to help someone, or does something like that, and you end up doing it. We said there's 3 Tikunim. Even a tree, we said, sometimes gets a certain Tikun by getting eaten from, or by eating an animal, or whatever. It gets a Tikun.
From the tree, but
if I cause someone to make a bracha, a cat, you won't be able to eat. But you can get a Tikun through other ways. There are other ways to be done. Right? If you're in a place with a Beit Midrash or this, or whatever, you can get some type of Tikun in that way. Or stam, the amount of suffering that he gets for a certain amount of time, that itself is a Tikun sometimes. Just the fact that he lives as a cat for a certain period of time, then that's it.
Suffering?
What?
What kind of
No, inside, internal things. Yeah, no, the fact that he has to live as a cat for however many years until he gets the final tikkun, and then he moves out.
Take also 1 week, it could take,
Right. We mentioned a guy can get it for. We mentioned it could take a week and it could take 100 years. I have stories which we're going to get to. You're going to see sometimes people have Gilgulim for 300-400 years. You know what I'm saying? It can last. It can last for a lot of times. Okay. What you call it? Okay, yeah. Okay, the Midrash Shmuel in Pirkei Avot. In Pirkei Avot, there's a pirush of Midrash Shmuel in Perik Bet, Mishnah Vav or Zayin, depends which one you have. It's famous, but the Mishnah brings that a person saw a skull floating in the river, and he said the one who killed you is going to get killed, and the one who he's going to get killed, and the one who killed him is also going to get killed. Sof metifach yetufach, right? Right? That's going to happen. It's going to meaning it's going to eventually happen. He has a number of questions. How do you know he was killed in this? I don't want to get into all this questions. He has a whole slew of questions. But one of the questions he asks, he says, I've noticed many times, not many times, but you see sometimes someone kills someone else and they kind of live a long life. They make it to a ripe old age. You never necessarily see that they die early or he himself gets killed. Who says that Dafka, the murderer, gets killed? Again, if you're in the mafia, chances are you're not going to make it, right? Probably. But not always does it work out that way. Sometimes people get away with it, right? We know some examples, right? Like football players in America, maybe you've heard about a few years ago, right? I'm saying people get away with it. They manage to live nice long lives. Say again? Or they go to jail for a certain amount of years and then they're done. They plead insanity, right? How do people get away? How do people get away with this? So he says, Al pi soda ibur. That's what he says. Al pi soda ibur. He says because soda ibur, this idea that even though it doesn't happen, and like again, we're going to show you a number of stories about this happening, even though it doesn't happen right now, but eventually in the next Gilgul he gets it, and the person feels it. Don't think that he gets a p'tur. He eventually feels it, and everybody gets their tikkun in the right time. Everyone gets their tikkun in the right time. It all happens at the right place in the right time. Okay, that's this yesod about it happening. With that, I'll give you 2 stories. Okay, they're actually long stories. I'm going to try to make them short. One, I've said it before, so I'm going to say it in short, and the other one I'll take. Okay, one story I mentioned last year. We said a story when we talk about Kaddish. When we talk about the importance of saying Kaddish, there's a story in Isha Lachoma. That's a story about Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. And again, I did say it last year, so those people heard the recordings maybe, so I just prefer to do it a little quick. Do you remember the story or not? Yeah? Okay, even better. So then I'll make it short. Not everybody remembers the story, right? But I'm going to say it a little bit b'kitzur if you want to hear it fast, so you see it over there. Basically, there was a story of a woman, she used to pay to a yeshiva money in order that the bachrim, or not the bachrim, the avreichim, should say kaddish for those people that never had anyone to say kaddish. For all the niftarim, that their sons went off the derech or don't have children, and no one said kaddish for them, and we know the importance of saying kaddish. So she used to pay, and one time, she was a wealthy woman, but unfortunately her husband was niftar at a certain age. Her husband died, passed away, and the business went under as a result of that. It went together because it was dependent on him, and she lost all her money. She went to the Hanala of the yeshiva. Again, I'm making a little bit, I'm cutting corners a little bit here. That she went to the Hanala of the yeshiva, she went to the people in charge of the yeshiva, and she told them, listen, I can't do it anymore, I can't get it. I'm asking you a favor, can you continue saying the Kaddish? Because one day I'll get my money back, and I'm happy to continue paying you, but right now, I just don't have the taksiv, I just don't have the monetary capability to do it. They said, no problem. It was even a very emotional moment, they even cried. It was very special understanding that they did it l'shem shamayim. We're not here to do it just for the money, of course, we would be happy to do it. And they continued saying Kaddish for this lady. On her way out of the yeshiva, she was walking home. She felt a certain happiness, Baruch Hashem, that she was able to, that they're not stopping. Even though she was in a bad situation. She has 2 daughters to marry, she told them. We have 2 daughters to marry without any money, especially back then. No dowry, who's going to want to marry us? That's it, they're in trouble. And as she was walking out, an old man comes by, a bright face, a hadrat panim, all white, a very white, a lot of white. Panim, a glow, that's that. So she saw him and she was enhanced by the person. He came up to her and he asked her, what's going on? You look very sad, what's wrong? And this, she told him, it's tough for you, you don't understand what I mean, but 2 daughters, my husband died, I had a business, I don't have any more, we don't have any money, we lost it, we went under, He told her, how much money do you need to marry off these 2 daughters? She said, come on, you can't be serious. She told him how many tens of thousands of rubles she needs in order to marry off these daughters, in order to give them a place, right? She was living in Israel, you have to buy Madeira, right? You have to do what you have to do. So he said, he took out a banknote, and he said, he wrote the schum, the amount of money that she asked for, and he said, take this to bank over there, to the bank over there. He told him the address and the place. I want you to take it there tomorrow morning. Don't do it tonight. Tomorrow morning, I want you to take it there and ask them for the money. He said, what are you talking about? This paper? It's a paper with a banknote. Kilu is going to do it and sign in it. So he said, no, trust me. He said, you should do it. And she said, okay, can we get 2 adim? Let's get 2, if it doesn't work, at least can we get 2 witnesses? 2 witnesses. So they quickly went in and they took out 2 bachrim from the yeshiva. 2 bachrim from the yeshiva. They came, they witnessed this, they saw the signing of the banknote. It wasn't even a check, it was a banknote. And that's what he did. And then the man left and everybody went home. She went the next morning to the bank. She showed it to the pakid, she showed it to the teller at the bank. He looked at the note, he looked at her, he looked at the note, he looked at her, he said, lady, can you just wait here for a minute? He went to the back, it was bad news, right? He went to the back and he showed it to the president of the bank, the owner of the bank, the guy in charge of the bank, a very, very wealthy individual. He showed it to the owner of the individual, he showed it to the owner of the bank, he looked at the petek and he fainted. The owner of the bank fainted on the spot. They said, whoa, something's fishy here. They had a man stand next to the woman so she doesn't make a break for it out of the bank, because they don't know what's going on here. They said something's fishy going on. They had the shomer, the guard watching her in order to make sure she doesn't make a break for it. And as when he came back to, he looked at it, he called in the lady, he said, can I ask you, who is this person? Do you recognize the guy who gave you this note? She said, for sure. So he started flipping through a few pictures, 1 picture, 2 pictures, 3 pictures, 4. That's him. He looked at it, he almost fainted again. He looked at the picture, he told the teller immediately, I want you to go to the safe and take out all the money and give it to her right now. It's hers and she should go. Right? He gave her all the money. It was a big schum of money, a big amount of money. So they did, they gave her the money. Everybody asked, of course, we all want to know what the story is. Assume you don't want me to leave you hanging, right? I don't want to know what the story is. So basically, this person's father was niftar. The owner of the bank, his father was niftar 10 years ago, 10 years before this event. And he told the father was a very, very religious man. He was a very Tzadik, a very chashuv person. But the son went off the derech completely. He doesn't keep anything. He's even married to a Goya. Obviously it wasn't so enjoyable for the father. But he became a wealthy man, owner of a bank, etc. Kitzur, the father appeared to to this son 2 or 3 days beretza for 2 days in a dream. He appeared to this son of his, the owner of the bank, and he told him, listen buddy, you've been a bad boy. You've not been keeping to anything I raised. You didn't do anything. That's one thing. But listen, I was suffering in Gehenna for years because you never said one time Kaddish for me, you jerk. Right? You never said one Kaddish for me. Could have said at least 1 week. I would have been a little bit spared. I was a good guy, and I can't get up here without a Kaddish. And I'm very upset at you. And he said, but you should know that not long ago, as of a year ago, I was able to get up to Gan Eden. And you know how I was able to? Because of the yeshiva, the Bachrim in that yeshiva that were saying Kaddish all the time for all the people in the city that never had someone say Kaddish for them. I was able to get up to Gan Eden, and she owes it. I owe her a lot. I owe her a lot. And now she doesn't have any money. She needs a little bit of help. So I command you that you should be helping. You know, when you listen to your father says, especially when he's dead, you listen to him, right? Right? So he says, I command you that you should give her the money that is required. And he said, and she's going to come to you tomorrow morning, and you're going to give it to her. You're going to give it to her. That's what he said. Lamaisa, he woke up in the morning. The bank teller said, the owner of the bank said, I woke up in the morning. I told my wife, right? I told her, I told the story. She said, "Wait, you nuts? Stop with your stupid dreams. What are you crazy? All you Jewish idiots, right? What are you talking about? I don't need to make up your things. All dreams are farces." And he said, "Okay." So he said, as he was a good husband, he listens to his wife. He says, "Listen to your wife. Your wife tells you what to do. You tell her to do. She tells you it's stupid. It's stupid. That's it." So he went to work, and that's it. And he was sitting there, and then he sees the note. He sees the picture. He sees it was not just a bluff. It was real. He realized that she was wrong, and that's why he did what he did. The interesting part of the story, though, is that the person telling the story, I said, was Rav Yosef Chaim Zanefeld. He was the Rabbi of Yerushalayim 90 years ago, before the Medina, before the state was around. In the early days, he was very close with Rav Kook. He was the Rabbi of Yerushalayim. Anyways, he says, how do I know this story? He says, because those 2 Bachrim that signed, I was one of them. Rav Yosef Chaim Zanefeld, I was one of the people that came out of the yeshiva and signed the Petek. I was there. He was first-hand edut. It's written from him, first-hand edut. I was there. I saw the whole entire Maaseh. But on Kapanim, we see from here this idea that sometimes people come back. Okay, that people come back and they need a kapara through us or through not. And if not, then you suffer. He has to come back through a Gilgul, etc. I'll give one more quick Maaseh. One more quick Maaseh is brought here from the Parador. They bring in the Mamluaz and Parshat Tekiv. I'm sorry, the Lekach Tov. He says 8 years after the Chazon Ish was niftar, 8 years after the Chazon Ish was passed away, it says that there was a person who, his name is Yaakov Feldman. They call him Rabbi Yaakov Feldman. I don't know if he was really Rav, but it doesn't matter. He said over a story that happened to him personally. He says, when I was in Budapest, I lived in Hungary before the war. He was 17 years old before the war, and the Nazis were chogeg. They were taking care of it, and everybody was in tremendous fear of the Nazis, as we all know. So he played the bluff. That's it. He got rid of the Judaism thing, threw off his kippah. He acted like a goy. He worked on Shabbat. He did everything. He wanted to make sure I'm not going to go into any concentration camps. I'm going to be straight, and that's it. And he left his family, etc., etc. His father was a big Tzadik, he said, and whatever. He was a big Rav, chashuv person. Anyways, he said, all my trust, all my trying and doing all this didn't work. As we all know, in 44, they took over there, and they took over Davonenu in Hungary. They killed 1 million people with the Eichmann in the front. And he said over there, I was taken to Auschwitz, and by a miracle, I survived. He was 17 years old. The 17-year-olds were the ones who were put to work. And he was able to make it out of Auschwitz. He said it was mamash a miracle that he was able to get out. After that, he came to Israel. And he joined the ranks over here, and as we all know, he became like many people. They became completely non-religious. He became chiloni, but he said, I wasn't just chiloni. I was lagamrei af. I did everything. I ate on Yom Kippur. I worked on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. He had completely nothing to do with Judaism. Had nothing to do. Nitakti et kol hakesher im hayadut ve'im hachinuch shekibalti etzel horai. Avadeti lo rak b'Shabbat el gam Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Anyways, one Yom Kippur, Tavshin Yud Gimel, that comes out in 1953. He said one Yom Kippur, that night my father appeared to me. His name was Rav Chaim Mordechai. Rav Chaim Mordechai, my father, his beloved father, he liked him, but he just didn't agree with his religious things. He came to me in a kittel, I guess he was Ashkenazi, right? A white kittel, metzuchtzach, very clean. He was wearing a talit. It was on the night of Yom Kippur, and here he was. He just came back from work on the night of Yom Kippur. He went to work. He said he worked in Rishon LeZion, real story. He was working in some place in Rishon LeZion, doing things or whatever, and he came He came back that night and he saw him in a dream, and he said, Chazar b'cha, you should be quick, because I'm sitting and suffering from it, and you should, and you're putting your years are being cut off, which is relevant for what we spoke about in the past. I'll tell you in a second why. And then he didn't listen, he ignored it. A week later, he came back on the night of Shabbat. And also, the same thing, he says, he came back again to him in the nighttime, and he said, no, dreams. He says, oy vavoy, tashuv, right, tashuv choteh, and this. He ignored it. It happened once, twice, three times, he ignored it. After about a month, he says one time he went to work on Shabbat. On Rishon LeZion, and he came home, and in the middle of the day he went, and back then, I'm talking about 1953, I'm not dealing so much with TV sets, he turned on the radio. Poor guy, the radio, he couldn't open his iPhone, right? So he opened it up and he wanted to see what's going on and the things. And this, again, I'm telling you this from the Baal Ma'aseh. I probably wouldn't have said it. This is the guy himself who was off the derech saying this story himself. He said he turned on the radio, and the first thing he heard is he said, "Oy vavoy tashuv choteh." His father said, he heard his father's voice saying again, "You're in choteh." He heard it on the radio now. I'm saying he was awake. That's why the guy himself said it. I'm telling you, the guy was off the derech. Obviously, you could tell you when it's choser b'tshuva in the end, but. Right? He says, the guy said, I don't know what to do here. I'm confused. I can't believe that this is true in this. I heard there's a big Tzadik, the Gadol Ador. He lives right next to me. He lived not far from Rishon LeZion. There's a guy in Bnei Brak. I heard his name, something the Chazanish, Ravam Yeshaya, something, I don't remember his name. Right? He said, let's go talk to this Mr. Chazanish. Let's see what he has to say for himself. Right? Now, let's see if he'll explain to me. He said he walked into the Chazanish, and again, we're talking about a Chiloni that's giving this testimony. He walked into the Chazanish looked at him, and he said, whoa. You're the person who works on Yom Kippur, right? Your father is mitgalgel b'kever. Your father is suffering a tremendous amount because of what he is. And he says these words, B'shamayim kvar nichratz alecha gvar gzar din shichretu yamecha. You are chayiv karet. You eat on Yom Kippur. You're chayiv karet. You don't have many more years to live. Your karet is there, like we spoke about in the karet shiurim. You don't have much more time to live, and your father was concerned about you. He knows what you're in for. And that's it. He said, he told me that. That's what he said. The Chazanish went back down and he started learning again. So what am I supposed to do here? So he was wondering, is there something I can do? He didn't know what to do. He said, so look, that Shabbat I went home. I didn't know what to do. He said that, he didn't say he kept Shabbat. He said, I didn't smoke any cigarettes. Okay, he didn't smoke any cigarettes that day. Lo yishanti, lo falti radio and this. I still didn't know what to do. That Motzei Shabbat, he went to a movie and this, and then he came back, he said, I have to go. He went back to the Chazanish, and he asked him, the Chazanish, what should I do? The Chazanish said, there's obviously some schut that you have, some merit that you have, that was able to save you, that your father's coming down from Gan Eden in order to help you out here. He's coming, obviously there's something there's there. So the guy says, look, I was always nice to people, I always mechabed people, I'm always nice to people. He said, okay, that's very cute. Yeah. Don't give me the etiquette stuff. He says sometimes I give, I help people out. No, that's okay, that's for everybody. I want something real, something bemet. So he had to think, he sat down for a few minutes, and then he was trying to think of what it was, and then he remembered, I remember, when I was 16 years old, back over there in Hungary, there was a person who died. This was before that war took place. But there was someone who died in the forest, in the middle of the forest. Nobody wanted to go. It was incredibly dangerous. The Nazis were around the area. Nobody was willing to go. My father asked me if I can go, and I went. My father asked me if I can go, and I went. It was sakanat nefashot. I went in the middle of the night in the forest, and if I got cut, obviously we all know what that means, immediate death. And he still said I was most of nefesh to go, and I buried the person. He took the met and he buried the person. He gave him a spot. He made a little tziyun on top of where he buried him, and I came back, and the Chazanish said, that's the ticket, right? That's where you got. That was the schut that you have in order to save you. Your father is not coming back anymore. It's up to you to make the decision. He said from then on, he was chazer b'tshuva. His father, this guy's father died in Auschwitz. He died in the camps, by the way. He was in the gas chambers. But he said that because of that, I came back to Torah Mitzvot, and Baruch Hashem, it's been fantastic. He said from then, L'shmor Torah Mitzvot, ki yudi u'me'az ani ro'eh k'masai yidei bracha ve'atzlacha, Baruch Hashem, things are good. He lived a longer life. He passed the years of karet. He made a birthday. And that's it. Okay, so that's the idea that we see, that sometimes people come back in order to be able to give us a little bit of an extra coax. They come to keep us going. But at the same time, we're trying to bring out the message, the important message that even when we don't know the answers to all the questions, you don't have to know the answers to all the questions, because everything is with a cheshbon. The Arizal writes, it's like a machine where sometimes you have to move a borek here and borek here, you have to move things, a screw here and a screw here. I like to think about it, for those of us who are outdated, like I'll put myself as being outdated already. Remember those operators in the past? Remember those operators when you push, you remember the picture? Okay, right, you remember that? You have to plug here and plug here and plug it. That's the mushal that he kind of gives. It's the mushal of the idea of the things sometimes move here. A person has to go here or go here, and there's a cheshbon for each and every person, and we can't always know 100% the cheshbonot of Shamayim. We can't always know 100% the cheshbonot of Shamayim, but there's a reason for each and everything that happens. Okay? I did want to speak on one piece, but it's already a little bit late. It's already 20 past. Should I speak on one more? Give me 2 minutes? Everyone's okay? What? It's okay. What? Okay, fine. We're going to finish with one small piece. I just want to speak about the Ramban in Eov. When he speaks about Eov, about the pain that he went through, Eov was a rich man. He was a wealthy man, a very prestigious person, children and everything. The Satan told him, Hashem said to the Satan, you could do whatever you want. Rakit chayav al tarog. You're just not allowed to kill him. You could do whatever you want. He gave him boils. He was suffering very painful. All his children, Lo Aleinu, died, his wife, and he lost all his money. It sounds pretty bad, right? Now, after all that happened, now there's one thing. Now, most of us, we can give answers for that, because we have an idea called Tzadik v'Ralo. We all know there's reasons. Sometimes people receive things for different reasons. But Eov had a good complaint. What was his good complaint? Something that I don't think many of us have. I never did anything wrong. Eov knew for a fact he never did anything wrong. That's pretty heavy, right? He was a Tzadik Gamur. You understand? He was pretty good. He knew for a fact. So even when all his friends were trying to make him feel better, Chazal go to task, you shouldn't have made him feel better. He has to know that, no, this was a takana, a gzeira from Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu asked, Tzadik v'ra'alo, and Hashem, no. Hashem said, no, it's above me. And we all know the famous case. Rabbi Akiva. Moshe Rabbeinu sees, when Moshe Rabbeinu he was up in Shabbat. No one's ever going to get to that level. He was on the 49th level. He was not allowed to reach the 50th. He got to 49 levels. He sees Rabbi Akiva, Doresh Tag V'Tag. He has millions of Talmidim, 24,000, everything. He's the biggest tzaddik in the world. He was a tzaddik all the time. He never had anything wrong. Even his early years, the first 40 years of his life, you should know. Why did Rachel marry him? Because he was a ish tzanua, the Gemara in Ketuvot says. He was a tzanua guy. The Gemara in Shabbat, Rabbi Akiva, right? The Gemara in Shabbat brings that he was working for someone, and he worked 3 years, and he said, now it's time for pay after 3 years, Chaver, yeah, so no one complain. When you get your delay, I'm talking about, for all of us, 1 second. And he told him after 3 years, he said, listen, I don't have any money. You listen to money? He said, you don't have an animal? He said, no, I don't have this, don't have this. And he went home. So the boss came up to him, this is the Gemara in Shabbat. The boss came up to this worker and he said, what did you think when I told you that I'm a jerk? He said, no, I figured that the behemoth you rented out, he said, and the money, you ran out of money because the business went short. And everything else that you own was already mukdash l'shamayim. You made it hegdish to the Beit HaMikdash. And he said, Muftachani, I'm telling you, that's what happened. Everything you said is 100% correct. And the Sfarim bring down, the Sefer Mekubalim, the Ramami Pona says, that was Rabbi Akiva. In other words, Rabbi Akiva was a tzaddik from the beginning. He was already, Rachel knew what she was doing. She knew what she was beating a terror of the women. She was incredible. And here he is, he asks, V'zeh mascharo, what's the schar? Moshe Rabbeinu asks, what's the schar of Rabbi Akiva? Masrekot shel barzel. He was being lo aleinu. I mean, mamish, you can't imagine, with boiling hot, steamed metal that was flaying his skin, mamish alive, until the most painful experience that Rabbi Akiva did, and he was saying Shema Yisrael the whole time over, and even Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm not even going to start, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Zet Torah v'zeh schara, and what did he say? Shtok kach ala lefanai. That's how my machshava is thinking. So everybody reads it, and you say in a simple way that, okay, Hashem thinks one way, and we think one way. We can't ask any question. I just want to say a beautiful pshat that the Sfarim bring down. This is in the Shari Or, which is the Sefer Kabbalah. I'm not saying any Kabbalah, don't worry. I might say one sphere, but it doesn't mean anything. Don't worry about it. Don't get confused. I'm not saying anything, okay? But he says one important idea. The world was created, the world was created bedin. Allah b'machshava. In the machshava, there's... Okay, follow me. I'm just going to say one short thing. Again, don't think I'm going to say anything very big here. We all know there's 10 sfirot. The world was created with 10 lights. Okay? So far so good, right? No, right? Okay, the highest one is called Keter. Keter is the crown. After that, you have the 3 levels over here. You have Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Our body is a 3-ring body made up of the Sfirot. You have 3 here, 3 here, 3 here. That's 9, and Keter is on top. That's 10. Okay? It's really 11. Let's leave it. Okay? Anyways, so when the world was created, b'machshava Keter is Ratzon, meaning Hashem wants to build the world. Hashem had to create a wanting. Okay? Creating a wanting. That's Keter. But Chokhmah is how the world started as creating. That's when Hashem starts the creation. But we have no idea what Chokhmah is. That's just the first sphere how Hashem started. Chokhmah is the beginning, the first building block in creation. That's called machshava. You understand? Whenever you want to build something, first you think, I want to build a house, and then you think, wow, and then you start actually thinking about the house. Maybe it'll be like this. You start thinking about the house. That's Chokhmah. We never discuss Chokhmah because that's on the highest sphere. It's too high for us. We can't get there. That's what it means, Kachala b'machshava lefanai. This decision is in machshava. It's in the highest sfirot. We can't get there. It's in the higher worlds. It's in the world of Keter. It's in the world of Chokhmah. The world that we don't discuss. Even the Sifrei Mekubalim don't talk about Chokhmah because it's too high for us to discuss. The world was created in the beginning b'din, with din, which is judgment, and then Hashem did afterwards rachamim. What happened? He made a mistake? He started like this? No. In the higher worlds, we are in din. We are in the world of din, with judgment, but we need to survive with rachamim, with a little bit of chesed. You follow? So that's why the tzadikim, the higher people, are in chokhmah. They are in the higher realms. They're left up in the higher realms. They're left in the worlds up in the higher places where HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care of them. So even though we can't understand everything, that's all I'm trying to bring out here. We don't always fully understand what's going on, but you should know that there's a lot to it. The Tochacha of Eov, or what happened with Rabbi Akiva, the things with Tzadikim. So Kal v'chomer, when we have things that occur by us, then we have to understand that it comes from a certain place. Come on, we have answers, which Bli Neder next week I want to speak about Tzadik V'Ralo and Rasha V'Tovlo. We're going to speak about why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. We'll try to speak about a few understandings behind it, but we already see Ramazim. It goes back to the idea of the Gilgulim. Everything comes because of this reason. You just have to know. People think when you say it's all in Shemaim, it's like an excuse. We can't understand anything. No. It was created in a world that we're not connected to. We're not there. We're not in that world. If you would connect there, you would understand. You understand? It's in a world of Chokhmah, and that's how it is. It started with Din. The world was created with Din, and that's how it should be. Like what happened to Rabbi Akiva. But now that it's not like that, we don't know. So next week we'll speak about Tzadik V'Ralo B'ezrat Hashem, and also we have a few other stories to elaborate on it. Okay, Ad Kad.